It's a really nice song, and y'all sang it well. Okay. We're going to do something different today. We're going to use this as our sermon today. Is that all right? So if you have yours, take it out. I like the hard copy. Yours is probably on your phone or something. But going to tell you two stories. One is in the Bible. One is another. It says there in John chapter 13. John chapter 13 is our first story. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew his hour had come to depart out of the world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. In verse 2 it says, "And during supper, when the devil had put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things in his hands, that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from the supper. He laid aside his garment and girded himself with a towel. Then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and wipe them with the towel in which he was girded." And verse 6, he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" And Jesus answered, "What I'm doing you do not know now, but afterwards you will understand." And then Peter said to him, "Lord, not on my feet only, but also my hands and my head." And Jesus said to him, who has bathed does not need to wash except for his feet, but he is clean all over, and you are clean, but not every one of you. For he knew who would betray him. That was why he said, "You are not all clean." And then in verse 12 it tells us, "And when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and resumed his place, he said to them, 'Do you know what I have done to you?'" Do you know what I've done to you? We think about those things, don't we? Well, there was a doctor, Dr. Smith. He was a controversial physician in town. There was a time when he refused to take those heroic measures, you might say, that hospitals do when a patient came in and it looked like they were on their last leg, we would say, he would let them die. And there were other times patients would come in and he wouldn't treat them as much as so. He knew that his decision would go against the policies of a local hospital because the hospital always wants to do more tests and more procedures and medical opinions, and that took a lot of time. It took a lot of money. But because Dr. Smith thought this procedure kind of prolonged the agony of the patients and their families, he rejected doing them. And the hospital, in turn, rejected what he was doing. And the medical staff came together. They investigated what was going on and brought charges against Dr. Smith. And if found true, it would demand that he be dismissed from the hospital staff. And the Dr. Smith was smart. He was a very experienced physician. And his colleagues who challenged him were also intelligent and intentional. And as true of most organizations, the conflict was over authority. Who had the authority? Was it the physician? Was it the hospital and the hospital policies? And divisions were great, and the conflict was severe. After a number of hearings between the hospital and the board, they demanded that he be dismissed from the hospital. And of course, there were reporters who kept the discussion of the board in the public eye. And everyone in town began to see what was going on, and it was discussed throughout town. But Dr. Smith, he sued the hospital, demanding that he be admitted back into practice and treat patients there. But the hospital went out and hired a lawyer to represent them. His name was Kent Hansen, and he was there to defend the interest of the hospital. And when they went to trial, Mr. Hanson wanted to begin his opening statements. That was the lawyer. He began his opening statements. He says, Dr. Smith here, he wants to quibble over the hearings procedures. But we're really here to talk about killing people. And as the court proceeded further, at the end that the court ruled against Dr. Smith, he was dismissed from the medical staff at a nearby other small hospital, and his practice was now limited to his own office and a nearby nursing center. And the dispute was angry, it was humiliating, and it was disturbing to everyone that was concerned. Many years passed by, and Mr. Hanson, the lawyer, went to church one day, and he had to come to the meeting with the Lord Jesus Christ, and he gave his life to Jesus. And he was baptized, and he joined the same local church where Dr. Smith and his wife attended every week. They would kind of sit back over in that area over there, and he saw them there at church each week. And over more and more time, he saw him sitting there, and he went to the pastor and he said, I want to do something to bring reconciliation between me and Dr. Smith. And the doctor thought that was a good idea, but he thought it was more of a bad idea because the pastor at that time was also on the hospital board who dismissed him. And several other physicians that worked in the hospital were also members of this church. He says, and it was bad enough that it was between the hospital and the public, but we don't want to bring that problem back up inside our church and rip our church apart. So he thought it was better that they don't say anything about that. Well, one Sabbath, as communion came, over the last few years, not only had he come to Jesus, but he'd come to Jesus in such a way that people noticed that there was a change in his life. And so they asked him to become an elder in the church. And it was Sabbath for communion. And during all that time that he wasn't an elder, he didn't ever come to communion. Communion in churches and even in the Seventh Adventist, it's one of those times where when they announce communion, we stay home, or when they announce to separate for foot washing, people leave. And then a few come back inside. And he was one of those people. He hadn't been communion for many, many years, but on this Sabbath, he decided that he better go wash feet out because he was an elder. He was a leader in the church. He wanted to set a right example. And so he walked out of the church, and in that church, then they walked down to the hall, down to the end room down there where he was going in to wash feet where the men were. And as he walked down that hall, he noticed that Dr. Smith was standing in the doorway to where the men were washing their feet. And throughout the entire lawsuit, he had never talked to Dr. Smith personally. Lawyers, they talk to each other, they present their ideas, and they try to convince the jury and the judge, and that's kind of how things go. And so for many years, he had not talked to him, and he was standing there in the doorway. But there was no way to go past him without speaking. And so he turned to him and he says, "Good morning, doctor. How are you?" And the doctor responded, "Do you have anybody to serve you to wash your feet?" And he said, "No, I don't." He says, "Well, may I wash your feet?" And he said, "Yes, you can." And so they entered into that room together, and Dr. Smith motioned for the lawyer to sit down, and he went over and he got a basin of water and a towel, and he came over, and Dr. Smith removed his socks. They knelt down, they washed each other's feet, they prayed for one another. And when he thought that Mr. Hanson was ready, he went and got a fresh basin of water, and he came and he washed his feet, reciprocating with one another, praying with one another. And for the very first time in his life, he began to experience true reverence, emotion of awe and humility, brokenness and tenderness, swept throughout him, and thankfulness for God who can break down walls that nobody else can. Breaking down walls so that he could create love between these two men. And after drying his feet, he sat down beside him and put his arm up on his shoulders. He says, this is amazing. It's amazing that something like this could happen between us. And Dr. Smith turned to him and says, no, I've been watching. I've been watching you as you gave your heart to Jesus and as you studied your Bible, as you learned how to pray, as you began helping to lead people in this church. I've been watching you week after week. And Mr. Hanson turned to him. He says, I've been watching you too. It's a blessing for me to come through these doors every Sabbath and see you and your wife sitting down over there after all the misunderstandings that have taken place in your life and your life throughout this community. And they looked at each other, and the lawyer told him, I'm sorry for all the pain and suffering that I've caused you and your family. And those two men, they stood up and they hugged. Great big man hug. You guys know how it is, don't you? It's different than the ones that ladies do. It's personal. It's intimate. A man hug. Those two men, they remain friends to this day. They continue to meet and pray for one another and share confidences. A physician and a lawyer, the professional equivalent of cats and dogs, getting along with one another. The prosecutor and the prosecuted, a man whose livelihood was attacked and his attacker. They washed one another's feet and they embraced. And if either one of them are ever asked the question whether they have ever seen a miracle or not, they both tell this story. Verse 12 tells us this. John chapter 13, verse 12. When he had washed their feet and taken his garments and resumed his place, he said to them, do you know what I've done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should also do as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, what does it say? Blessed are you if you do them. So according to what Jesus tells his disciples, we will all be given an opportunity to wash one another's feet. The men, I think, will go downstairs to the youth room. The ladies will go either through this door or down the hallway to the youth room down there. And then the couples who want to wash one another's feet or families, they can go down to the fellowship room. We can dismiss ourselves at this time, and in a few minutes we'll come back up here and take part in the communion service, if that's okay. This